Hello, listener. It's 6:42 p.m. in Los Angeles. The 405 is gridlocked from LAX to the Valley. The 101 hasn't moved in 20 minutes. And approximately 400,000 people are currently sitting in their cars wondering why helicopter traffic over Hollywood Boulevard is heavier than usual for a Tuesday evening in October. They're about to find out. My name is David Morgan. KCRW 89.9 FM, broadcasting from Santa Monica. Right now I should be doing my evening show, playing music, taking calls about traffic. Instead, I'm on the air because 3 minutes ago, LAPD issued a code that I've never heard them use in 15 years of monitoring their frequencies. Code Silver. Mass casualty incident with ongoing threat. Multiple locations. And the first location they named was the Chinese Theater. Here's what's happening on Hollywood Boulevard right now. At approximately 6:27 p.m., during a red carpet premiere for a major studio film, an individual attacked security personnel outside the Chinese Theater. Multiple bites. Witnesses describing behavior that doesn't match anything LAPD trains for. At 6:33 p.m., the individuals who were bitten began attacking others. At 6:38 p.m., Hollywood Boulevard had approximately 12,000 people on it between tourists, premiere attendees, street performers, and workers. At 6:42 p.m., that number is decreasing rapidly as people run. My producer tonight is Marcus Chun. Marcus grew up in Koreatown, knows LA like he knows his own apartment, and he just pulled up live news helicopter feeds on every screen in the studio. He's watching Hollywood Boulevard from the air, and he's not saying anything because what he's seeing doesn't have words yet. I'm putting him on mic. Marcus, David, I'm looking at the boulevard from 4 different angles. I see crowd movement that looks like panic. I see LAPD presence that looks overwhelmed. I see what appears to be violent altercations in at least 6 different locations visible from altitude. And I see the premier barrier crowd control completely collapsed. At 6:44 p.m., a film premiere brings approximately 3,000 people to a 2-block area. Barriers, red carpet, celebrities, media, fans who've been waiting since morning for a glimpse. That density in that small an area means transmission happens fast if nobody understands what they're looking at. At 6:46 p.m., my phone is receiving texts from people I know across LA, West Hollywood, Silver Lake, Venice, downtown. All reporting LAPD presence in closures and rumors spreading faster than information. Los Angeles is a city of 4 million people in the city limits and 13 million in the metro area. When something happens in Hollywood, everyone hears about it immediately because everyone in LA is connected to Hollywood in some way. At 6:48 p.m., LAPD just issued a shelter-in-place advisory for Hollywood Division. That's everything from La Brea to Western, from Franklin to Melrose. Approximately 80,000 residents and an unknown number of visitors. The advisory says violent incidents, ongoing threat, avoid the area. It does not say zombie outbreak, but LAPD doesn't have a code for that. I'm saying it because the reports I'm hearing match every other outbreak we've tracked. Bites, rapid progression, violent behavior, spread through contact. And it started at 6:27 p.m., which means we're 21 minutes in. At 6:50 p.m., I need everyone in Los Angeles to understand something about this city's infrastructure. LA is not a walking city. It's a driving city. People don't shelter in place here the way they do in cities with subways and apartments and corner stores. People get in cars and drive. And if 4 million people try to get in their cars simultaneously, the freeway system that's already gridlocked becomes completely impassable. Do not get on the freeways right now. Do not try to drive out of LA. If you're in a building, stay there. If you're in your car stuck in traffic, you're actually in a decent position. Lock the doors. Run AC. Monitor this frequency. At 6:52 p.m., Marcus just got through to someone at Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank. The studio has locked down. All sound stages secured. All productions suspended. Approximately 6,000 people on the lot sheltering in place. That's one studio making one decision that just saved potentially thousands of lives if this spreads to the valley. At 6:54 p.m., the first celebrity confirmation. An A-list actor who was at the premiere just posted to Instagram from inside the Chinese theater saying they're locked in the building with approximately 800 people and LAPD is telling them not to leave. The post has 3 million views already. TMZ is live streaming from a helicopter. This is Los Angeles. Everything happens in public here. At 6:56 p.m., I'm getting calls. I'm putting them on air. First caller is Stephanie, calling from an apartment on Franklin Avenue, 6 blocks from the boulevard. She can see the police presence from her window. She's asking if she should leave. Stephanie, where would you go? I don't know. Somewhere safe? Your apartment has locks and walls, and you're 6 blocks from the incident. Somewhere safe is where you are. Stay there. At 6:58 p.m., second caller is James, stuck on the 101 at Highland. He's been stationary for 40 minutes. He can see the Hollywood exit is closed. He's asking what's happening. James, you're in a metal box with locks and climate control. You're actually safer than people on foot right now. Stay in your car. Don't get out to look. Don't walk toward the closures. At 7 p.m., the temperature is 78 degrees. La in October is perfect weather. Clear skies, light breeze. The kind of evening that usually has restaurant patios full and people walking dogs and the city feeling alive in the good way. Tonight, it's alive in a different way. At 7:02 p.m., Marcus shows me the TMZ feed. The helicopter is directly over Hollywood Boulevard, and I can see what he was describing. Crowds moving in waves. LAPD forming lines. Something happening in the spaces between that the camera can't resolve clearly, but that creates the crowd reactions. At 7:04 p.m., LAPD issues an update. Code Silver extended to West Hollywood and East Hollywood. The incident area just tripled in size. That's 200,000 residents now under shelter advisory. At 7:06 p.m., I need to tell you about LA's geography because it matters. Los Angeles is a sprawl. Neighborhoods connect to neighborhoods with no clear boundaries. Hollywood connects to West Hollywood, connects to Silver Lake, connects to Los Feliz, connects to East Hollywood, connects to Koreatown. There's no river or wall or natural barrier. If this spreads beyond Hollywood division, it spreads through neighborhoods that blend into each other across the entire basin. At 7:08 p.m., the 405 northbound is stopped completely from LAX to the valley. The 10 is stopped from downtown to Santa Monica. The 101 is stopped through Hollywood and into the valley. Every freeway feeding out of central LA is gridlocked with people who heard something was happening and tried to leave before they understood what. Those people are now stuck in their cars watching the sun set over a city that's closing sections of itself in real time. At 7:10 p.m., third caller. Maria, calling from a restaurant on Melrose. They've locked the doors. Approximately 60 people inside. Staff is keeping everyone calm. She's asking how long they should stay. Maria, you stay until LAPD gives you clearance to leave. You have food, water, climate control, and security. That's everything you need. At 7:12 p.m., Marcus gets confirmation that all major studios are implementing lockdown protocols. Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, Sony, Disney. Every lot in Burbank and Culver City and Hollywood has thousands of people on site, and they're all sheltering in place, using the security infrastructure that studios maintain for exactly these kinds of scenarios. The entertainment industry is built on controlling crowds and managing risk and securing valuable assets. Tonight, those systems are being used for people instead of intellectual property. At 7:14 p.m., I'm going to do something Marcus has been telling me to do. If you're listening to KCRW right now, if this frequency is giving you information you need, subscribe to Outbreak FM on YouTube. Tell us in the comments where in LA you are right now. And if you want to support what we do, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link in the description. We're going to be here all night. Support local radio when it matters. At 7:16 p.m., the Chinese theater just evacuated approximately 800 people through a secured corridor to the Roosevelt Hotel across the street. LAPD and private security coordinated it. Every person moved safely. The premiere that brought 3,000 people to Hollywood Boulevard is now a secured hotel situation with everyone inside wondering if their careers just became secondary to survival. At 7:18 p.m., sunset is in 24 minutes. When the sun goes down, visibility changes. Helicopter cameras lose effectiveness. LAPD operations become more difficult. And LA becomes the city of lights in a way that usually means magic, but tonight might mean something else. Stay on this frequency. Because Hollywood is finding out that sometimes the biggest story isn't the one you're filming. At 7:21 p.m., LAPD confirms they're establishing a perimeter. Hollywood Boulevard closed from La Brie to Vine. Highland closed from Franklin to Sunset. All cross streets blocked. They're creating a containment box around the initial incident area, which means they understand this spreads, and they're trying to limit the geography. At 7:23 p.m., fourth caller, Derek, working security at a club on Sunset. He's got 300 people inside for an early event. He's asking if he should evacuate them. Derek, what's your security situation? Heavy doors, professional staff. We do crowd control every weekend. Then you're equipped for this. Keep everyone inside. Your security skills are exactly what tonight needs. At 7:25 p.m., Marcus pulls up social media analytics. The premiere incident is trending #1 globally on Twitter. Instagram has 40,000 posts tagged Hollywood Boulevard in the past hour. TikTok videos from inside the containment area are going viral in real time. This is the most documented outbreak we've tracked because it's happening in the most media-saturated city in America. At 7:27 p.m., fifth caller, Angela from Beverly Hills. She's asking if she should pick up her kids from a friend's house in West Hollywood. Angela, where are your kids right now? At a house in WeHo. Safe, but I want them with me. Driving from Beverly Hills to West Hollywood right now means going toward the containment area through gridlocked traffic. Your kids are safe where they are. Leave them there. Tell them you love them, and you'll get them when LAPD gives clearance. At 7:29 p.m., the freeway cameras show something Marcus and I have been watching develop. The 101 through Hollywood has people abandoning their cars and walking. Not everyone, but enough that LAPD is now dealing with pedestrians on a freeway in addition to the boulevard situation. People are making individual decisions that collectively create new problems. At 7:31 p.m., LAFD issues a statement. All fire stations on tactical alert. EMS resources staged outside the containment perimeter. They're not entering the hot zone without LAPD clearance and coordination. That's professional emergency response, recognizing that sending paramedics into an active incident creates more casualties. At 7:33 p.m., the sun is 9 minutes from the horizon. The light is going gold the way it does in LA, that particular quality that photographers chase and filmmakers worship. Tonight, it's just a timer counting down to something more difficult. At 7:35 p.m., Marcus gets a call from his brother, who works at a restaurant in Los Feliz. The restaurant has locked down. Staff and approximately 90 customers are secure. His brother wants to know if the infection has reached Los Feliz yet. Marcus tells him, not confirmed, but you're adjacent to the zone. Stay locked. Stay informed. At 7:37 p.m., sixth caller, Robert from Santa Monica, asking if the west side is safe. Robert, Santa Monica is 12 miles from Hollywood. We have no confirmed incidents west of La Brea, but LA is connected. Neighborhoods flow into each other. Stay aware. Monitor information. Don't assume distance means safety. At 7:39 p.m., I'm watching the TMZ helicopter feed, and I see LAPD forming a line on Hollywood Boulevard. Approximately 40 officers in riot gear, creating a physical barrier between the boulevard and the side streets. That's containment becoming visible. That's the line between incident and spread. At 7:41 p.m., the governor of California issues a statement. State of emergency declared for Los Angeles County. California Highway Patrol mobilizing additional units. National Guard activation being evaluated. The state is responding, but the response takes time, and time is measured in progression cycles that are 8 to 12 minutes each. At 7:43 p.m., seventh caller. Lisa from downtown LA. She works at a law firm on Figueroa. The building is locked down. 200 people in the building. She's asking how long this lasts. Lisa, I don't know, but your building is secure, and downtown has not been included in the containment area. You're in a good position. Stay patient. At 7:45 p.m., Marcus shows me the traffic map. Every major route in and out of central LA is red, completely stopped. The 405, the 101, the 10, the 5, the 110. Millions of people sitting in cars that aren't moving. Some of them are stuck. Some of them are safe. The difference depends on where they were when they stopped moving. At 7:47 p.m., I need to address something I've been avoiding because it's uncomfortable. If this outbreak started at 6:27 p.m., and it's now 7:47, that's 80 minutes. In 80 minutes with 8 to 12 minute progression cycles, we're looking at multiple transmission generations. The numbers compound, and LA's density accelerates everything. At 7:49 p.m., the Chinese theater incident was public and visible and filmed. But if there were earlier incidents that weren't recognized or reported, the actual timeline is longer than 80 minutes. And longer timeline means larger outbreak before containment. At 7:51 p.m., eighth caller. Marcus, yes, another Marcus, calling from the Hollywood Forever Cemetery where he works. The cemetery has locked its gates. Several hundred people were visiting before closing. They're all secured inside. He's asking if a cemetery is safe. Marcus, it's as safe as any walled property with limited access points. You have natural barriers and controlled entry. Stay there. At 7:53 p.m., the sun touches the horizon. Sunset in Los Angeles on a clear October evening. Usually beautiful. Tonight, it's just the end of visibility. At 7:55 p.m., LAPD updates the containment perimeter. Now extending east of Vermont, west to Fairfax. The box is getting larger. That means either the infection spread beyond initial containment, or LAPD is being conservative about perimeter placement. Either way, more area locked down. At 7:57 p.m., ninth caller. Patricia from Griffith Park. She was hiking when she got the emergency alert. She's asking if she should come down. Patricia, where are you on the trail? Near the observatory. Good visibility. Can see the city. Stay there until after dark. The trails coming down go through areas we don't have information about. The observatory is a structure with security. Go there if you need shelter. At 7:59 p.m., Marcus's phone is getting texts from people across the industry. Agents, managers, producers, actors. Everyone asking the same questions. Is this real? How bad is it? When can they move? LA runs on the entertainment industry, and the entertainment industry runs on information, and right now information is incomplete. At 8:01 p.m., 10th caller. James from Venice Beach. He's asking if the beach communities are isolated from this. James, Venice is connected to LA through roads that are currently gridlocked. You're geographically separate, but not isolated. Monitor updates. Don't assume safety. At 8:03 p.m., the temperature is 76 degrees and dropping slowly. LA doesn't get cold at night, even in October. We'll bottom out around 64 degrees by early morning. That's mild. That's not going to suppress infection the way Alaska's cold did. We're somewhere between Arizona's extreme heat and Alaska's extreme cold, which means we're in the biological sweet spot for this pathogen. At 8:05 p.m., Marcus gets confirmation from Universal Studios. The lot is secure. Approximately 8,000 people on site are sheltered in sound stages and office buildings. Tours suspended. Theme park closed. Universal City Walk evacuated and secured. That's one of LA's major entertainment complexes managing the crisis with professional infrastructure. At 8:07 p.m., I'm looking at the city lights coming on. LA at night is a carpet of lights spreading from the ocean to the mountains. Usually it's beautiful in an urban way. Tonight, every light represents people wondering if they're safe. At 8:09 p.m., 11th caller. Stephanie again, from Franklin Avenue. She can hear helicopters and sirens. She's scared. She wants to know if leaving her apartment and going to a friend's in Pasadena is smart. Stephanie, Pasadena, is an hour away in normal traffic. Tonight, it's unreachable. The freeways are stopped. You called me 2 hours ago, and I told you to stay. That advice hasn't changed. Stay in your apartment. Lock your door. Monitor information. You're safer than most people in LA right now. At 8:11 p.m., LAPD announces they're implementing a curfew for Hollywood Division effective immediately. No movement on streets without emergency authorization. This is LA imposing restrictions on movement in a way the city almost never does. That's how serious this is. At 8:13 p.m., Marcus shows me updated helicopter footage. The boulevard is largely clear of crowds now. People either secured in buildings or evacuated, or moved to areas outside the visible frame. What remains visible? LAPD presence, emergency vehicles, and scattered individuals moving in ways that suggest they're not moving voluntarily. At 8:15 p.m., the infection count is unknown, but LAPD radio traffic suggests double digits at minimum. Every transmission cycle adds more. The math compounds until containment stops it, or degradation stops it, or both. At 8:17 p.m., 12th caller. Maria again, from the Melrose restaurant. She says someone inside is showing symptoms. Fever, confusion. They're isolating that person in the kitchen. She wants to know what to do. Maria, when did this person arrive at the restaurant? They were already here when we locked down. Then they were potentially exposed before arrival. Keep them isolated. Don't let anyone else near them. Call 911 and report. LAPD needs to know. At 8:19 p.m., the reality of containment is that some people are already inside secure locations when symptoms begin. The perimeter stops new transmission, but doesn't stop progression of existing infections. Every secured building has to manage its own internal assessment. At 8:21 p.m., I'm going to stay on this frequency until LA doesn't need it anymore. Marcus is going to keep coordinating, and we're going to give you information as fast as we can verify it, because tonight, that information is the difference between good decisions and bad ones. Stay with us. Hollywood is learning that the biggest stories don't always have happy endings. At 8:24 p.m., LAPD confirms they're coordinating with the California Highway Patrol to close freeway access into Hollywood. The 101 at Highland, Vine, and Western. The 10 at La Brea. They're preventing more people from driving into the containment area, but they're also trapping the people already on those freeways in their current positions. At 8:26 p.m., 13th caller, David from Koreatown. He's in his apartment. He can see police activity on Western. He wants to know if Koreatown is affected. David, Koreatown borders the containment zone. No confirmed incidents there yet, but you're adjacent. Stay inside. Monitor updates. At 8:28 p.m., Marcus gets word that LAX is implementing enhanced screening for all departing passengers. Temperature checks, visual assessment. They're trying to prevent infected individuals from boarding flights to other cities. That's lax making decisions based on incomplete information, but making them anyway because the risk of not making them is too high. At 8:30 p.m., the National Guard activation is confirmed. California National Guard units deploying from Los Alamitos and other Southern California bases. Eta to Hollywood, 90 minutes minimum. That puts military presence on the ground around 10 p.m., 2 hours from now. At 8:32 p.m., 14th caller. Michael from Silver Lake. He's asking if Silver Lake is safe or if he should drive to his parents in Orange County. Michael, the freeways are impassable. Silver Lake hasn't been included in containment. Stay where you are. Don't create movement when movement is the problem. At 8:34 p.m., I'm watching social media and seeing a pattern. People posting from inside secured locations. Restaurants, hotels, offices, homes. Everyone documenting in real time. In most cities, this would just be information chaos. In LA, it's normal behavior scaled up. Everyone here is used to documenting their lives. Tonight, they're documenting survival. At 8:36 p.m., Marcus's brother calls back from Los Feliz. The restaurant is still secure. 90 people calm and organized. They've inventoried food and water. They're treating this like a professional situation because LA service industry workers are professional about everything. At 8:38 p.m., 15th caller. Angela from Beverly Hills again. Her kids in West Hollywood are scared. They want her to come get them. She's asking again if she should drive there. Angela, I need you to hear this clearly. The containment area includes West Hollywood. LAPD has established a curfew. You cannot reach your kids right now, even if you tried. Talk to them. Keep them calm. They're safe where they are. You trying to reach them makes everyone less safe. At 8:40 p.m., the hardest part of tonight for thousands of LA parents is being separated from their children by circumstances they can't control. Every instinct says go to them. Every fact says stay where you are. At 8:42 p.m., LAFD reports they're establishing medical triage points outside the containment perimeter. Fairfax and Sunset, Vermont and Hollywood, La Brea and Melrose. These are assessment points for people evacuated from the zone and for anyone showing symptoms. They're building infrastructure for processing potentially exposed individuals. At 8:44 p.m., 16th caller. Lisa from downtown calling back. Someone in her building is having a panic attack. They're asking if the firm has medical supplies. Lisa, panic attacks aren't infection. They're stress response. Get that person to a quiet space. Talk them through breathing. Your building has 200 people. Someone there knows first aid. Find them. At 8:46 p.m., the psychological toll is real. 200 people locked in a building, scared, separated from families, processing something they didn't expect. Panic attacks are normal response. Managing them is part of managing the crisis. At 8:48 p.m., Marcus shows me the traffic cameras for the 405 at Sunset. Cars abandoned. People walking on the freeway. CHP trying to maintain order. This is what happens when a gridlocked freeway stays gridlocked long enough that people make individual decisions to leave their cars. At 8:50 p.m., I need to address those people. If you abandoned your car on the freeway, you just gave up the one defensible position you had. A car has locks and metal and glass. The freeway shoulder has none of those things. LAPD and CHP can't protect you when you're on foot. Get back in your car. At 8:52 p.m., 17th caller. Patricia from Griffith Observatory. She made it to the observatory building. Security let her in. Approximately 40 people inside, including staff and visitors who were there at closing. She says they can see the city lights. and the helicopter activity, and it looks like a movie except it's real. Patricia, the observatory is solid and secure. You made the right call going there instead of down the trails. At 8:54 p.m., Marcus gets an update from Warner Brothers. The lot is still locked down, but they're organizing resources. Food distribution, medical assessment, communications infrastructure. They're treating 8,000 people on a studio lot like a small town that needs management. At 8:56 p.m., the temperature is 74 degrees. In 2 hours, it'll be 70. By midnight, 68. The overnight low, around 64. La's mild night is not going to suppress infected mobility the way we've seen in other outbreaks. Temperature is not our weapon tonight. At 8:58 p.m., 18th caller, Derek from the Sunset Club. He's got 300 people, and they've been locked in for 90 minutes. Some people are getting restless. He's asking how to manage it. Derek, restless is normal. 90 minutes feels long. This is going to be longer. Keep people informed. Keep them comfortable. Use your crowd management skills. You do this every weekend. This is just a different kind of crowd. At 9 p.m., we're 2 hours and 33 minutes into this outbreak. The progression timeline means we've gone through multiple transmission cycles. The initial cases have degraded or been contained. The second wave is active. The third wave is progressing. The math continues until it stops. At 9:02 p.m., LAPD radio traffic indicates they're encountering degraded, infected in the initial incident area. Individuals who transitioned early and are now immobile or near immobile. That's the timeline catching up. That's biology doing what it does, even when we can't control the transmission. At 9:04 p.m., 19th caller, Robert from Santa Monica calling back. He's hearing from friends that the west side is clear. He's asking if that's confirmed. Robert, absence of information is not confirmation of safety. We have no reported incidents west of La Brie. That doesn't mean none exist. That means none have been reported yet. Stay cautious. At 9:06 p.m., Marcus pulls up the CDC's Los Angeles field office information. The CDC has a regional office in LA, but it's not like having CDC headquarters 30 miles away like Georgia had. The CDC presence here is coordinating with LAPD and LAFD, but they're not deploying teams the way they did in Athens. This is LAPD's operation with CDC support, not CDC's operation with LAPD support. At 9:08 p.m., 20th caller, Stephanie from Franklin Avenue for the third time. She's apologizing for calling again, but she needs to hear a voice. She lives alone. She's been in her apartment for 2.5 hours. She's scared. Stephanie, you're doing everything right. Being scared is normal. Being alone is hard. But you're safe, and you're making good decisions. And tomorrow morning, you're going to walk out of that apartment, and this will be a story you survived. Keep listening. We're here. At 9:10 p.m., being alone during crisis is its own kind of difficult. Stephanie represents thousands of people in LA apartments, processing this without anyone physically present. The radio becomes company. The voice becomes connection. At 9:12 p.m., LAPD updates the containment status. Perimeter holding. Internal clearing operations beginning in secured sectors. They're transitioning from containment to clearing, which means they believe the perimeter is working, and now they need to address what's inside it. At 9:14 p.m., the National Guard ETA is updated to 9:45 p.m. They're arriving earlier than estimated because they're using CHP, escort, to move through traffic faster than normal. 45 minutes until military presence on the ground. At 9:16 p.m., 21st caller, James from the 101 at Highland. He's been in his car for 3 hours. He needs to know when he can move. James, CHP, is working on clearing the freeway, but it's going to take hours. You have fuel and a C. You're safer in your car than you would be trying to walk. Stay there. Be patient. At 9:18 p.m., patience is the resource everyone needs most tonight, and it's the hardest resource to maintain when you're scared and uncomfortable and separated from normal life. At 9:20 p.m., Marcus's phone shows a TMZ exclusive. They've interviewed someone who was at the premiere and got out before lockdown. The person describes what they saw. The account matches every other outbreak. It goes viral immediately because TMZ has reach, and because this is Hollywood, and everything Hollywood does goes viral. At 9:22 p.m., information spreading through social media is faster than official channels and less accurate than official channels, but it shapes behavior anyway. People make decisions based on what they read on Twitter and Instagram. That's reality in 2024, LA. Stay with us. The guard is 23 minutes out, and Hollywood is holding its perimeter. At 9:25 p.m., the National Guard advance element arrives at the LAPD Hollywood Division Station on Wilcox. Approximately 60 soldiers establishing coordination with LAPD Incident Command. The rest of the deployment is still en route, but the first boots on the ground change the resource equation. At 9:27 p.m., 22nd caller. Maria from the Melrose restaurant for the third time. The person they isolated in the kitchen has fully transitioned. They're violent. They're contained in the walk-in cooler because that's the only space with a door that locks from outside. 60 people in the restaurant can hear what's happening in that cooler. Maria, you did the right thing isolating them. Keep that door locked. Keep everyone away from it. LAPD knows your location. When clearing teams reach your block, they'll address it. At 9:29 p.m., the walk-in cooler solution is improvisation under pressure. It's not ideal, but ideal isn't available. Available is a heavy door and a lock, and 60 people staying safe on the other side of it. At 9:31 p.m., Marcus gets word from Universal Studios. They're implementing a phased internal clearing operation. Security teams going building by building with LAPD coordination to ensure no infected are inside the secured perimeter. 8,000 people spread across a studio lot require systematic approach. At 9:33 p.m., 23rd caller. New voice. Christina from Echo Park. She's asking if Echo Park is affected or if she should evacuate to her sister's place in Pasadena. Christina, Echo Park is outside the current containment zone. Pasadena is unreachable by car tonight. Stay where you are unless you receive specific evacuation orders from authorities. At 9:35 p.m., the pattern in these calls is clear. People want to move. Movement feels like action. Staying feels passive. But tonight, staying is the tactical choice, and movement creates exposure. At 9:37 p.m., LAPD announces they're establishing checkpoints on major roads leaving Hollywood, not preventing all movement, but screening vehicles for occupants showing symptoms. This is containment transitioning from hard perimeter to managed flow. At 9:39 p.m., 24th caller. Michael from Silver Lake again. He's seeing police activity on Sunset near Alvarado. He wants confirmation about whether Silver Lake is affected. Michael, we have reports of police activity across East LA, but no confirmed infected incidents in Silver Lake. Police presence doesn't mean infection presence. It means LAPD is being thorough. At 9:41 p.m., Marcus shows me updated aerial footage. Hollywood Boulevard is now showing LAPD and guard presence in organized formations. The chaos of 2 hours ago has been replaced by systematic clearing operations. It looks controlled from altitude, even if ground level is more complicated. At 9:43 p.m., the full National Guard deployment arrives. Approximately 300 soldiers establishing positions at the containment perimeter and preparing to support internal clearing operations. Colonel David Torres establishes command coordination with LAPD and begins tactical briefing. At 9:45 p.m., 25th caller. Derek from the Sunset Club. 300 people have now been inside for over 2 hours. He's asking about timeline for release. Derek, release happens when the area is cleared and deemed safe. LAPD will coordinate with businesses for phased release. Timeline is still being determined. You're doing great. Keep them comfortable. At 9:47 p.m., doing great is relative, but Derek is in fact doing great. 300 people calm and secure for 2 hours is professional crowd management under circumstances that aren't normal. At 9:49 p.m., the temperature drops to 72 degrees. The overnight low is approaching. Even at 64 degrees, LA's mild night won't suppress infection the way cold does. But every degree down is a degree that affects biological processes, and those small effects accumulate. At 9:51 p.m., Marcus gets a call from someone at Paramount Studios. The lot has been locked down and secured. Approximately 4,000 people on site. They're coordinating with LAPD for security assessment. Paramount is 1 mile from the boulevard, 1 mile from the origin point. They locked down early, and that decision is looking better by the hour. At 9:53 p.m., 26th caller, Patricia from Griffith Observatory. The 40 people inside have organized. They've inventoried resources. Someone is a paramedic. Someone else is former LAPD. They've got skills, and they're using them. Patricia, that's exactly what successful crisis response looks like. Skills being deployed by people who have them. You're in good hands. At 9:55 p.m., LAPD provides the first official infected count. They're estimating 60 to 80 individuals showing violent behavior within the containment area. Some have been neutralized. Some are in late-stage degradation. Some are still active. The count is preliminary and likely conservative. At 9:57 p.m., 60 to 80 out of a tourist population of 12,000 plus residents is approximately 0.5%. In raw numbers, it's devastating. In percentage terms relative to the density and transmission opportunity, it suggests containment worked before exponential spread occurred. At 9:59 p.m., 27th caller, Angela from Beverly Hills for the third time. Her kids in West Hollywood are okay, but they're scared and they want to come home. She's begging me to tell her when she can get them. Angela, I can't tell you when because I don't know when. What I can tell you is that when LAPD gives clearance, when the area is safe, you'll be able to reach them. Until then, talking to them and keeping them calm is what they need from you. Physical presence isn't possible right now. Emotional presence is. At 10:01 p.m., emotional presence versus physical presence is the calculus thousands of LA families are managing tonight. Being there versus being safe. Connection versus containment. At 10:03 p.m., Marcus shows me social media analysis. The Hollywood outbreak is trending globally. News coverage from every major network. International media calling it Hollywood horror and Sunset Boulevard siege, and other dramatic phrases that don't help but do describe the magnitude. At 10:05 p.m., 28th caller, Lisa from downtown. Her building is still locked down. 200 people are getting tired and frustrated. She's asking if they can leave. Lisa, downtown is outside the containment area, but LAPD hasn't issued all clear. Your building made a decision to lock down. That was probably the right decision. Stay until you have confirmed information that movement is safe. At 10:07 p.m., LAPD begins phased release of some secured locations. Hotels outside the immediate incident area. Office buildings that completed internal assessment. It's not wholesale release. It's targeted release based on location and security status. At 10:09 p.m., the Roosevelt Hotel, where Chinese theater premiere attendees were moved, begins releasing guests who pass assessment. Temperature checks, visual examination, interview about potential exposure. Anyone clear gets released to transportation. Anyone showing symptoms gets diverted to LAFD triage. At 10:11 p.m., 29th caller. Stephanie from Franklin Avenue. She's heard about phased release. She's asking if she can leave her apartment. Stephanie, you're not in a secured business location. You're in a residential building. The phased release applies to commercial properties. You stay in your apartment until LAPD lifts the curfew for Hollywood Division. At 10:13 p.m., the complexity of managing LA during crisis is that the city has layers: commercial, residential, entertainment, tourism. Each layer has different protocols and different timelines and different risk assessments. At 10:15 p.m., Marcus gets confirmation that all major studios have completed internal assessment. Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, Sony, Disney. All lots secure. All personnel accounted for. No internal incidents. The entertainment industry's security infrastructure worked exactly as designed. At 10:17 p.m., 30th caller. James from the 101. He's been in his car for 4 hours. CHP is finally starting to move traffic. He's asking if he should drive or if he should wait longer. James, if CHP is moving traffic, follow their direction. Drive carefully. Don't get out of your car. Don't stop unless directed to. Get home safely. At 10:19 p.m., the freeway situation is improving incrementally. Not solved, not normal, but improving. People who've been stuck for 4 hours can finally move. That's one piece of the crisis resolving. At 10:21 p.m., Colonel Torres provides the National Guard operational update. Perimeter secure and reinforced. Internal clearing teams deployed. Coordination with LAPD professional and effective. No conflicts encountered beyond expected resistance from infected individuals in late-stage degradation. At 10:23 p.m., late-stage degradation means the early infected are immobile or nearly immobile. The timeline is catching up to the outbreak the way it always does. Biology has limits, and those limits are being reached. At 10:25 p.m., Marcus and I have been broadcasting for 3 hours and 43 minutes. We're tired in the specific way that adrenaline-sustained operations make you tired. But we're staying because LA is still managing this crisis, and people are still listening. Stay with us. Hollywood is clearing and LA is holding, and we're going to see this through to morning. At 10:28 p.m., LAPD confirms they've completed clearing operations in the initial incident area around the Chinese theater. All infected individuals in that sector have been neutralized or contained. The origin point is secure. That's significant progress in 3 hours and 1 minute since the first emergency call. At 10:30 p.m., 31st caller. Derek from the Sunset Club. LAPD just gave him clearance to begin phased release of his 300 people. He's asking about protocol. Derek, LAPD will coordinate with you. They'll assess people as they exit. Temperature check, visual, questions. Anyone clear gets released. Anyone symptomatic gets directed to triage. Follow their process. At 10:32 p.m., Maria calls from the Melrose restaurant. LAPD clearing team has arrived. They're handling the situation in the walk-in cooler. The 60 people in her restaurant are being moved to a secure assessment area. She says thank you for talking her through the past 3 hours. Maria, you kept 60 people safe by making hard decisions. That's what tonight required. At 10:34 p.m., the hard decisions are the ones people remember. Locking someone in a walk-in cooler sounds brutal until you understand it was that or risk 60 people. Maria made the right call, and she's going to have to process that decision for a long time. At 10:36 p.m., Marcus gets word that LAX is resuming normal operations after implementing enhanced screening protocols. Flights delayed by 2 to 3 hours, but operating. Passengers who are stranded in terminals are being processed through security and allowed to board. LAX handled its piece of the crisis professionally. At 10:38 p.m., 32nd caller. Christina from Echo Park. She's seeing on social media that Echo Park is clear and safe. She wants confirmation. Christina, I can't confirm what social media tells you. What I can confirm is that Echo Park hasn't been included in official containment, and we have no verified reports of incidents there. That's the factual answer. At 10:40 p.m., social media creates its own reality during crisis. People post things. Other people believe them. Sometimes they're accurate. Sometimes they're not. Verification matters more than speed. At 10:42 p.m., the Roosevelt Hotel completes its guest release. 800 people processed through assessment. 7 diverted to triage with symptoms. 793 cleared and released to transportation. That's a better than 99% clear rate. At 10:44 p.m., 33rd caller, Michael from Silver Lake again. He says police activity on Sunset has decreased. He's asking if that means it's over. Michael, decreased police presence means they're reallocating resources to higher priority areas. It doesn't mean over. It means managed. Stay informed. Don't assume. At 10:46 p.m., LAFD reports triage centers have processed approximately 180 people. Of those, 43 are showing symptoms consistent with early-stage progression. Those individuals are being transported to isolation facilities. The rest were cleared or treated for unrelated issues like dehydration and panic attacks. At 10:48 p.m., 43 symptomatic out of 180 assessed means roughly 24% of people thought they might be infected actually are infected or are showing stress-related symptoms that mimic infection. The other 76% are fine. At 10:50 p.m., Marcus shows me updated traffic maps. The 405 is moving slowly. The 101 through Hollywood is still closed, but the 101 through the valley is moving. The 10 is flowing. Freeways are returning to normal terrible LA traffic instead of gridlock. At 10:52 p.m., 34th caller, Patricia from Griffith Observatory. They're being told they can shelter there overnight, or they can be evacuated to assessment points. The 40 people are voting on it. She's asking what I'd recommend. Patricia, that's a community decision, not a broadcaster decision. But the observatory is secure, and you have resources and you're organized. Staying there overnight is a viable option if people are comfortable with it. At 10:54 p.m., the observatory group deciding democratically is exactly how crisis response should work when you have time and safety to make collective decisions. Not every situation allows that. This one does. At 10:56 p.m., LAPD provides updated casualty information. Confirmed deceased, 19. Infected and neutralized, 41. Currently in medical isolation, 23. Those numbers are preliminary and will be updated as assessment continues. At 10:58 p.m., 19 dead. 19 people who were in Hollywood tonight for a premiere or dinner or tourism or work and who aren't going home. Those 19 are names we'll learn as families are notified. Their losses the city will carry. At 11 p.m., we're 4 hours and 33 minutes into this outbreak. The initial panic has resolved into systematic management. The chaotic first hour has been replaced by professional clearing operations. Hollywood is transitioning from crisis to recovery. At 11:02 p.m., 35th caller, Angela from Beverly Hills. LAPD just gave her clearance to pick up her kids from West Hollywood. She's asking the fastest route. Angela, take side streets, not freeways. La Cienega is probably your best option. Drive carefully. Call your kids and tell them you're coming. They've been waiting 4.5 hours to hear that. At 11:04 p.m., parents reuniting with children after hours of separation. Is recovery beginning? Not recovered. Beginning. The fear resolves into relief, and then eventually into processing what the fear meant. At 11:06 p.m., Colonel Torres announces that National Guard operations are transitioning from active containment to security support. The immediate threat has been addressed. Now it's about maintaining security while LAPD completes assessment and while the city processes what happened. At 11:08 p.m., Marcus's brother calls from Los Feliz. The restaurant is getting clearance to release people. 90 people who've been inside for 3 hours and 46 minutes can finally leave. His brother sounds exhausted and relieved in equal measure. At 11:10 p.m., 36th caller. Lisa from downtown. Her building is releasing people. 200 people who've been locked down since 7 p.m. are being allowed to leave. She says her law firm is going to have a lot to process about crisis protocols after tonight. At 11:12 p.m., every business, every institution, every organization in LA is going to process this night differently. Some will decide their protocols worked. Some will decide protocols need updating. Some will decide they need protocols where none existed before. At 11:14 p.m., the temperature reaches 68 degrees. The overnight low is 2 to 3 hours away. La's mild night hasn't suppressed infection, but it hasn't accelerated it either. We're in the biological middle range where progression happened at standard rates. At 11:16 p.m., 37th caller. Stephanie from Franklin Avenue for the fourth and final time. LAPD just announced curfew lift for residential areas. She can leave her apartment if she wants. She's asking if she should. Stephanie, where would you go at 11:16 p.m.? I don't know. Nowhere, I guess. I just wanted to know I could. You can, but you don't have to. Tomorrow morning, the city is going to look different in daylight. See it then. At 11:18 p.m., wanting to know you can leave is different from needing to leave. Stephanie stayed safe for almost 4 hours by making smart decisions. One more night in her apartment is the right call. At 11:20 p.m., LAPD announces that Hollywood Division is officially transitioning from active incident to security assessment. The immediate crisis is resolved. Clearing operations continue, but the emergency phase is over. At 11:22 p.m., emergency phase over doesn't mean normal. It means the acute danger has passed, and now it's systematic management and investigation and eventually understanding what went wrong and how to prevent it. At 11:24 p.m., Marcus and I have been on air for 4 hours and 42 minutes. We've taken 37 calls. We've coordinated with LAPD, LAFD, National Guard, and approximately 10,000 listeners who needed information. We're exhausted. We're staying on until dawn because that's what we committed to. At 11:26 p.m., the Chinese theater announces it will remain closed pending investigation and security assessment. The premiere that brought 3,000 people to Hollywood Boulevard will not be rescheduled. The film will release without the Hollywood spectacle it was supposed to have. At 11:28 p.m., 38th caller. Robert from Santa Monica. He says the West Side made it through unaffected. He's asking if that's luck or geography. Robert, it's both. Geography created distance. Distance created time. Time allowed information to spread faster than infection. You made good decisions based on that information. That's not just luck. At 11:30 p.m., LA is a sprawling city. Tonight that sprawl worked in favor of containment. The infection started in Hollywood and mostly stayed in Hollywood because the distances between neighborhoods provided natural barriers that gave response time to work. At 11:32 p.m., Marcus pulls up the final social media statistics. The outbreak trended #1 globally for 4 hours. Over 2 million posts. Hundreds of thousands of videos. The most documented outbreak because it happened in the most media-saturated location on Earth. At 11:34 p.m., those millions of posts are going to be the historical record. Not official reports, not news coverage. Individual people documenting their experience of surviving something unprecedented in a city built on documenting everything. Stay with us. We're approaching midnight, and LA is approaching the transition from emergency to aftermath. At 11:37 p.m., LAPD provides their late evening comprehensive assessment. The containment perimeter is being reduced as cleared areas are verified safe. Hollywood Boulevard from Vine to La Brie is cleared and will reopen tomorrow morning. Residential areas are being released from curfew in phases. The crisis is definitively in recovery phase. At 11:39 p.m., 39th caller, James from the 101. He made it home to Studio City. He's been in traffic or on hold for 5 hours. He says thank you for being a voice during that, and then he hangs up before I can respond. At 11:41 p.m., thank you for being a voice. That's what this frequency has been tonight. Not solutions, not rescue, just information and connection, and the sound of someone who's paying attention. At 11:43 p.m., Marcus gets word from Warner Brothers. The studio is beginning phased release of personnel. 8,000 people will be released over the next 3 hours in organized groups with security escort to parking areas. By 3 a.m., the lot will be empty except for overnight security. At 11:45 p.m., 41st caller, Derek from the Sunset Club. All 300 people released safely. 0 infections in his crowd. His security protocols and his locked doors kept everyone safe. He sounds like someone who just realized how close they came to something terrible. Derek, you ran a club tonight the way clubs should be run during emergencies. Professional, calm, secure. Remember that. At 11:47 p.m., running a club during a zombie outbreak is not what Derek trained for, but he had transferable skills and he used them. That's what tonight has been across LA. People using the skills they have for situations they never expected. At 11:49 p.m., the governor provides a late-night statement. State of emergency remains in effect for Los Angeles County, pending full assessment. National Guard will maintain presence through the weekend. Investigation into the outbreak origin is beginning immediately. California will support LA through recovery. At 11:51 p.m., 41st caller, Christina from Echo Park. She's asking if Echo Park being clear means it was never at risk, or if it means they got lucky. Christina, Echo Park is 3 miles from Hollywood Boulevard. That's distance that matters in outbreak response. You were at risk, but distance plus time plus information meant you could make decisions that kept you safe. That's not luck. That's geography plus good decisions. At 11:53 p.m., LAFD announces that all triage centers are winding down operations. Final patients are being processed. Medical resources are being released back to normal operations. The emergency medical response is complete. At 11:55 p.m., 42nd caller, Patricia from Griffith Observatory. The 40 people voted to stay overnight. The observatory staff is providing blankets and water. They're treating it like an unexpected sleepover with a view of LA. She says it's weird, but it's also kind of beautiful watching the city from up there. Patricia, the observatory has always been a good place to see LA from. Tonight you're seeing it during something most people will never see. Process that however you need to. At 11:57 p.m., the temperature is 66 degrees and still dropping toward the overnight low of 64. In 3 to 4 hours, we'll reach bottom. The infected who are still mobile are in extreme late-stage degradation. Most have stopped moving entirely. At 11:59 p.m., Marcus shows me the traffic cameras one more time. The freeways are mostly moving. Not normal. Not smooth, but moving. People who were stuck for 5 hours can finally get home. That's infrastructure recovering in real time. At midnight, 01 a.m., we cross from Tuesday into Wednesday. The Hollywood outbreak that started at 6:27 p.m. on Tuesday is now Wednesday morning's problem in terms of investigation and recovery and understanding. But the emergency phase is over. At midnight, 03 a.m., 43rd caller, Maria from the Melrose restaurant. She's home. She's processing what happened in her restaurant. She's asking if she made the right call with the walk-in cooler. Maria, You kept 59 people safe by making an impossible decision. The person in the cooler was already infected, already transitioning. Isolating them protected everyone else. That was the right call, even though it was horrible. At midnight, 05 a.m., horrible and right coexist tonight. Many decisions were both. Understanding that is part of processing what LA went through. At midnight, 07 a.m., LAPD announces preliminary investigation findings. The outbreak appears to have originated from an individual who arrived at the premiere, showing early symptoms. Initial transmission occurred during red carpet interactions, spread from there through the crowd. They're working to identify patient zero through premiere attendance records and security footage. At midnight, 09 a.m., patient zero is someone who was infected before the premiere and didn't know it or didn't care. That person is probably among the 19 deceased or among the 41 neutralized. Either way, identifying them helps understand transmission patterns. At midnight 11 a.m., 44th caller, Michael from Silver Lake for the last time. His neighborhood is officially clear. He's asking what tomorrow looks like for LA. Michael, tomorrow LA wakes up to news coverage and investigation and people processing trauma. Businesses will reopen. Freeways will run normally. The city will function. But it'll function while carrying what happened tonight. At midnight 13 a.m., what tomorrow looks like is LA being LA, resilient, moving forward, processing collectively and individually. The city doesn't stop because something terrible happened. It absorbs it and continues. At midnight 15 a.m., Marcus has been coordinating for 5 hours and 33 minutes. He's exhausted. He's also been perfect in his execution. Every connection he made, every source he coordinated, every piece of information he verified contributed to this broadcast, being useful instead of just noise. At midnight 17 a.m., I'm going to say something about Marcus Chun that he's going to tell me not to say. Marcus could have stayed home tonight. He could have monitored this from his apartment in Koreatown. He came to the studio because he knew I'd need help and because local radio during crisis requires teamwork. This broadcast worked because Marcus made it work. Marcus looks at me and says, "Don't make this weird, David. We're just doing our job." At midnight 19 a.m., doing our job. That's what everyone in LA who showed up tonight says. LAPD, LAFD, National Guard. Derek running his club. Maria managing her restaurant. Patricia at the observatory. Stephanie in her apartment, making smart decisions while scared. Everyone just did their job. And collectively, that's how LA survived. At midnight 21 a.m., Colonel Torres provides the National Guard final assessment of the night. Perimeter secure. Clearing operations substantially complete. No remaining active threats identified. Guard will maintain security presence, but operational tempo is decreasing. The military piece of tonight's response is winding down. At midnight 23 a.m., 45th caller, Angela from Beverly Hills. She has her kids. They're home. They're safe. She's crying and thanking me, and I'm telling her she kept them safe by making hard decisions about not driving into danger when every instinct said go to them. At midnight 25 a.m., parents making hard decisions about staying away from children is some of the worst emotional work tonight required. Angela did it. Her kids are safe because she did it. That matters. At midnight 27 a.m., LAPD announces that Hollywood Boulevard will reopen to vehicle traffic at 6 a.m. Wednesday morning. Pedestrian access will be restricted pending investigation completion. Businesses will be allowed to reopen on individual assessment. The boulevard is returning to operational status. At midnight 29 a.m., returning to operational status is not the same as normal. The boulevard has blood on it, and trauma in it, and questions about it. But it's returning to function because that's what cities do. At midnight 31 a.m., 46 caller, Lisa from downtown for the final time. She's home. Her law firm is going to have meetings about tonight. She's going to have her own processing to do. She says this broadcast helped her stay calm during hours that could have been panic. Lisa, calm during crisis is a skill. You have it. Use it. At midnight 33 a.m., Marcus and I are approaching 6 hours on air. The sun rises in approximately 6 hours and 14 minutes. We're staying on this frequency until daylight because we said we would, and because someone might still need to hear a voice. At midnight 35 a.m., the final statistics are being compiled. 19 deceased, 41 infected and neutralized, 23 in medical isolation. Approximately 12,000 people were in the initial incident area. Approximately 200,000 people were under shelter advisories at peak. Approximately 13 million people in the metro area were monitoring the situation. 19 dead out of 13 million aware. The math is terrible for those 19 families and manageable for the city overall. Stay with us. Hollywood survived, and LA is transitioning from emergency to mourning. At midnight 38 a.m., the city of Los Angeles officially downgrades from Code Silver to Code Yellow. Active threat resolved. Enhanced security protocols remain in effect. Investigation and recovery operations ongoing. The emergency is over in the technical sense. At midnight 40 a.m., 47th caller, Derek from the Sunset Club, calling one final time. His club is cleaned. His staff is gone. He's locking up. He says running that club tonight was the hardest shift of his career, and he hopes he never has another one like it, but he's glad he was there. Derek, 300 people are home safe because you were there and you knew what to do. Remember that tomorrow when you process tonight. At midnight 42 a.m., the entertainment industry is issuing statements. Studios expressing condolences. Production companies postponing projects. Agencies checking on clients. Hollywood runs on publicity and spectacle. And tonight, it got spectacle it didn't want, and it's processing how to respond to that. At midnight 44 a.m., 48th caller. Stephanie from Franklin Avenue calling for the fifth and truly final time. She says she's going to try to sleep. She says hearing my voice for the past 5 hours made her feel less alone. She says thank you and hangs up before I can tell her that broadcasters feel less alone when they know people are listening. At midnight 46 a.m., the symbiotic relationship between broadcaster and listener. We give you information and connection. You give us purpose and reason to stay on air. Tonight that relationship worked exactly as it should. At midnight 48 a.m., Marcus shows me the final social media count. 2.4 million posts about the Hollywood outbreak. More documented than any previous outbreak. The videos and photos and first-hand accounts are creating a historical record that investigators and researchers will study for years. At midnight 50 a.m., LAPD announces that family reunification centers will remain operational through Wednesday morning for anyone still trying to locate loved ones. The centers have successfully connected approximately 300 families so far. A few dozen people remain unaccounted for pending final assessment. At midnight 52 a.m., unaccounted for becomes identified eventually. Sometimes they're fine and just haven't checked in. Sometimes they're in medical facilities under treatment. Sometimes they're among the deceased awaiting identification. The waiting is its own kind of crisis for the families. At midnight 54 a.m., the temperature reaches 65 degrees. The overnight low is minutes away. When the sun comes up in 6 hours and 3 minutes, LA is going to be 68 degrees and clear and beautiful in the way October mornings here are beautiful. The weather doesn't care what happens tonight. It's just weather. At midnight 56 a.m., 49th caller. Patricia from Griffith Observatory. The 40 people are settling in for the night. They've organized watch rotations. Someone brought a guitar. They're making the best of unexpected circumstances. She says the view of LA from up here is spectacular and surreal, and she's taking mental photographs. Patricia, the observatory has always been a place where people go to see LA from distance and perspective. Tonight, you're getting both kinds of perspective, the physical and the existential. At midnight 58 a.m., Marcus has confirmed that all major studios are secure and clear. All secured locations have been assessed. All personnel accounted for. The entertainment industry's infrastructure held under pressure it was never explicitly designed for, but which its security protocols accidentally prepared it to handle. At 1 a.m., we're 6 hours and 33 minutes into this broadcast. The crisis that started at 6:27 p.m. is now 6 hours and 33 minutes in the past. The recovery is just beginning. At 1:02 a.m., 50th caller, Christina from Echo Park. She can sleep now knowing her neighborhood is verified safe. She says she's going to donate to KCRW tomorrow because local radio mattered tonight in ways she didn't appreciate before. Christina, we appreciate that. Local radio exists because communities support it. Support it when you can. At 1:04 a.m., the investigation into Outbreak origin is officially beginning. LAPD, FBI, CDC, and California Department of Public Health establishing a joint task force. They'll examine the premier guest list, security footage, medical records, and transmission patterns. The investigation will take months. At 1:06 a.m., Marcus and I are doing something we haven't done all night, which is sit in silence for a few seconds and just process that we've been doing this for 6.5 hours, and that LA made it through, and that we were part of how it made it through. At 1:08 a.m., I'm going to do something I should have done hours ago. I'm going to say plainly that 19 people died tonight. 19 families are going to wake up Wednesday morning to notifications that someone isn't coming home. Those 19 people came to Hollywood for entertainment and died because an infected person was at a premiere and transmission happened before anyone understood what was happening. Those 19 deaths are not acceptable collateral damage. There are people whose names will be released as families are notified and whose losses LA will carry going forward. At 1:10 a.m., the losses and the survival coexist. 19 dead and thousands saved. Both are true. Both matter. Processing both is what recovery looks like. At 1:12 a.m., LAPD confirms that the premiere will not be rescheduled. The film will release on streaming services instead of theatrical. The Chinese theater will remain closed, pending renovation and security assessment. Hollywood Boulevard will have visible changes from tonight for weeks or months to come. At 1:14 a.m., visible changes are how cities remember trauma. The closed theater, the investigation barriers, the security presence. Eventually, those change too, but they mark the time between crisis and normal. At 1:16 a.m., the National Guard announces phased withdrawal beginning at dawn. Full presence through Wednesday daytime. Reduced presence Wednesday night. Return to normal operations by Thursday. The military response is unwinding as civilian authority resumes full control. At 1:18 a.m., Colonel Torres calls into the broadcast directly. He says LAPD's response was professional and the coordination between agencies was textbook, and that LA should be proud of how it handled tonight. He says the Guard was support, not lead, and that's exactly how it should work. At 1:20 a.m., 51st and final caller. James from the 101 calling one more time. He made it home. His wife was terrified. His kids were worried. But he's home and safe, and he says thank you for being calm on the radio while he was stuck in his car for 5 hours. James, calm is what tonight required from everyone. You staying in your car instead of walking was calm. Calm saved your life. At 1:22 a.m., Marcus and I have taken 51 calls. We've coordinated with dozens of sources. We've broadcast for 6 hours and 40 minutes continuously. We're exhausted in ways that exhausted doesn't describe. But we're staying until sunrise because that's the commitment we made. At 1:24 a.m., the city lights are still on. The freeways are still moving. The helicopters are still in the air, but fewer of them, and for different reasons. LA is settling into the night that follows the crisis. Not normal night, not comfortable night, but night nonetheless. At 1:26 a.m., I want to close this portion of the broadcast by acknowledging everyone who made tonight survivable for LA. LAPD, who responded immediately and professionally. LAFD, who established triage and care. National Guard, who deployed fast and supported effectively. Derek, who ran a club. Maria, who managed a restaurant. Patricia, who made it to the observatory. Stephanie, who stayed in her apartment, making smart decisions while scared. Angela, who stayed away from her kids when every instinct said go to them. Marcus, who coordinated this broadcast. And the 19 people who died and whose names we'll learn soon. At 1:28 a.m., the sun rises at 7:27 a.m. That's 6 hours from now. Marcus and I will be on this frequency when it rises. We'll broadcast the sunrise over LA, and we'll tell you what Wednesday morning looks like after Tuesday night. At 1:30 a.m., Hollywood survived. LA contained it. The infrastructure held. The people made good decisions. And KCRW 98.9 was here when you needed information and connection, and a voice saying we're all in this together. At 1:32 a.m., we'll be back at 7 a.m. with sunrise coverage. Until then, we're staying on this frequency with updates as they come in. Get rest if you can. Process what you need to process. And know that LA made it through something tonight that most cities never face. Hello, listener. Hollywood is still here. The boulevard is still here. The city survived. And when the sun comes up, we're going to see what that survival looks like in daylight. This is KCRE. We were here when you needed us. We'll be here tomorrow too. Stay safe, Los Angeles.